My name is David.
And my name is Jason.
And this is Discern Realities, a Dungeon World podcast. Our first segment is What Happened Here Recently. Jason, today I have kind of a sad story about a game I tried to get off the ground face-to-face with some new players that didn't turn out so great.
That happens every now and then. It happens. Well, so what went wrong?
So I wanted to run the Deathfrost Doom again, since I had such great success with that with new players, and I had a different group of players, so I figured, hey, why not recycle this, try it again. We had the tone discussion. Everyone was on board. Everyone got it. And then when immediately after we started, like 2 or 3 players just started like joking. And one player like wasn't paying really close attention. And another player wanted to like have music going. I said no to the music. And I like tried to draw those players' attention back and like even stopped and was like, hey, we're trying to have a more serious kind of game, like a scary kind of game here. Like, I get you want to joke, but like we're trying to go for a different tone here. And had that same conversation like 2 or 3 times within the hour. Ultimately, we had to scrap it. It all fell apart when the game store apparently decides to shut down for half an hour in the middle of their operation so that the like sole proprietor can go and get dinner. So when that happened, I just called it. I was like, yeah, maybe we'll come back to this another time.
Oh, that's a bummer. That sucks.
It was too bad. I wasn't quite sure what to do. Like, have you ever had that situation? How did you handle it? If you did.
Well, so tone is really tricky, right? Because on the one hand, you're all there to have fun, right? I mean, you're there to have fun. And there are some people who would argue, as long as everyone's having fun, like why so serious, right? But then on the other hand, you know, and I think this is kind of more where you and I come from, part of your fun, at least for some people at the table, for a lot of people at the table, is going to be getting a certain type of experience, you know? I had a kind of a similar situation recently in a game I was doing that was meant to be like quiet and contemplative and dark, right? And there was one player at the table who was just breaking the tone in a way, you know, like speaking very loudly, eating very loudly, like that kind of thing. It was fine. The game ended up being fine, but I was reminded like, oh man, this can be a real jarring thing sometimes. Like when the rest of us are trying to do a certain thing and one person is not. So I know how that goes. It's a tricky line. It's a hard thing to manage sometimes, honestly. We talked about it a little bit on our other podcast, and there aren't really great answers except if you have like just a single problem person to, you know, if you have to, maybe you take them aside and say, hey, look, you're really, really screwing up what we're going for here. You know, I know you want to have a good time, so do I, but this is what we're doing right now, you know. I think it's really good to just be very clear when you're setting expectations at the beginning of a session, you know. I'm sure you did. You just have to be really assertive about those expectations, you know, like this is what our goals are for this game. This is the tone we're going to do. This is the subject matter we're going to avoid. But it's hard. There aren't easy answers.
Yeah, I think what we ended up doing after that jarring interruption with the game store shutting down for half an hour is we just came back and I was like, hey, I think we're all wanting something a little different out of this session. Right, so we played some Cheat Your Own Adventure and we had a great time. So
good. That's a great way to say that. That's awesome.
We still had fun, you know, but I think if I try and run Dungeon World, I might just try and let it be the lighthearted crawling through a dungeon kind of adventure instead of the creepy Deathfrost Doom adventure with this particular group.
Different groups are definitely going to gel onto different things, and you know, a lot of it has to do with the environment too. That's a big part of it, right?
That's true. The other time that I was playing Deathfrost Doom, we were in like a really intimate setting and the lights were dim, so maybe that made a difference.
It makes a huge difference. Yeah, it really does.
Cool. Well, that's all I really wanted to say about that. I want to let listeners know even bad things happen to me, and let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Should I Be on the Lookout For? Jason, this week I've got something Dungeon World adjacent, maybe?
Super Dungeon World adjacent. Very adjacent. But I'm into it. Let's do it.
I want to tell listeners about The Final Girl by Brett Gillen, who we may have mentioned this once or twice on the Gauntlet podcast.
A few times on the Gauntlet podcast. Yeah. I know why you're bringing it up right now on Discern Realities. I'll let you continue, though.
Yeah, I'm bringing it up because just recently Brett messaged all of us on the Gauntlet and let us know that he was going to reopen The Final Girl for sale as a PDF, whereas before it had been taken down for one reason or another. I think he mentioned that he was tired of getting so many people asking about it on G Plus that he finally was like, I should really just reopen this. So way to go, community. We did it.
I mean, here's the thing. He had taken it off because he was going through some legit serious personal issues that was making it difficult for him to do fulfillment on the game when he was selling the game. And so I think that combined with the fact that, before our show, that game didn't move a lot of copies. Like there wasn't that much interest in it, right? And then we kind of discovered it and kind of made it, somewhat popular. And that's, bear in mind, our audience size is very modest. So it's a very modest popularity, but it was enough apparently to convince him to go ahead and make it available for sale, which is great because it's a really, really terrific game. And his message on the G Plus was really nice, just so that we can kind of bring it back to Dungeon World a tiny bit, because I do want to do that.
I do have ideas about how I want to use this for Dungeon World purposes.
The Final Girl is a story game where you create a large pool of communal characters, horror movie type protagonists or victims. You play out a number of scenes. There's a killer every round. The killer strikes and kills one or more of the people, until you get down to just one, who is your final girl. That's the basic thrust of the game.
Yeah. So my idea for how I would want to wrap this into my Dungeon World campaigns, and kind of add a different spin on my week-to-week sessions, I would use this to have my players create like a pool of adventurers that are all the victims, and then we would be describing a monster that is terrorizing them and hunting them down and killing them in the dungeon that they're going through, and maybe even some of it is traps or things that are in the dungeon that are killing them.
Oh, kind of like a character funnel, kind of.
Right, and then
okay.
Once all of that's happened, maybe a few weeks later, maybe a few months later, they would encounter the dungeon.
Oh, I see. So you would play this game where you have like a bunch of hapless villagers or whatever, kind of like in Funnel World, getting picked off one by one in this dungeon, and then you would use that as the foundation for a proper Dungeon World adventure later on. So like your adventurers would come in and like find the leftovers, and you'd have a bunch of callbacks to that like Final Girl game, right? Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a pretty cool idea, actually. I am behind that. I am behind that justification for talking about the Final Girl on a Dungeon World podcast. That's good. One way that we've played the Final Girl, we always like kind of put our own little spin on the game every now and then, because it's a great little system where the idea is to whittle down a bunch of characters till you get to one, right? And so one thing we've done is we've played like kind of a parody fantasy version of it, where all of the characters, your communal pool of characters, are all classic Dungeons and Dragons monsters in a dungeon. So like a lich, an owlbear, a gelatinous cube, except they can talk to each other and they coexist inside the dungeon, right? And the killer in this instance is actually the adventuring party that's coming through the dungeon and clearing out all the monsters. So if your group needs a break, you got a regular Dungeon World group and you just need like a week to take a week off while the GM prepares the next adventure, do something like that. Yeah.
In any case, The Final Girl, it's great.
It's awesome. Go buy it. It's so good. Yeah, go buy it. It's available for sale now. Go show Brett all the love on The Final Girl. You won't regret it. Like Dungeon World players, listeners of this podcast, you're going to fucking love this game. If you're not familiar with it yet, you're going to be familiar with it and you're going to love it. So
it's so good. It's so good. Now, and you don't have to get it in Italian anymore. You can get it in plain old English.
Yes, right. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Here Is Not What It Appears to Be. Jason, I understand you have something for us this week.
Yeah, so we've been talking about flags versus bonds a lot, both in the Gauntlet and on this show. And I think we even did flags as a segment in a recent episode, if I'm not mistaken. I wanted to just refine the idea a little bit for listeners, because something that I'd been running into from other players, in our different communities, had kind of reached out to me and said, hey, I love this idea of flags, but I'm not really sure how to get my players to engage with them. The players are having kind of a tough time figuring out how to do it.
I'm running into that too.
Okay, so I've got the answer. So listen closely, everyone, because we nailed it. We knocked it out of the park this last weekend. I should mention what flags are, in case you haven't heard this conversation already. Instead of bonds, you use these things called flags. Okay, and what the flags are, they're written by the player who owns the flag, and what you're basically saying how you want the other player characters to interact with your character. So, for example, if you have a knuckle-headed barbarian or whatever, you might have a flag that says, try to dissuade me from using violence as a means to an end. Or if if you have a thief character, you might have a flag along the lines of, convince me to sneak into a place that would be very dangerous to sneak into, or something like that, right? Those are not great flags, but that's the idea. So the idea is you have this this button or this trigger that other characters come and interact with, and they get XP at the end of the session, kind of like you would with bonds. Okay, so I played a couple of sessions with Gauntlet UK over the weekend, and the first session was a really good session, but we were clearly still kind of feeling out flags. They hadn't done flags yet, so they weren't super familiar with it, and so we were a little tentative about it. But then we made some adjustments on the second session, and we really, really unlocked how to make flags sing. Here it goes. 2 things we did. First thing we did was, at the top of the session, I had the players go around and say which of their flags they think would be the most salient based off what's going on in the adventure right now. Okay, so we just had a little conversation about, based off what's going on right now, this is the flag I think you guys should try to hit, right? So that was the first thing. The second thing we did was we were very, very purposeful about having a conversation about the flag before we did the scene where the flag was going to be triggered. So it was a real meta sort of thing, but basically what was happening was the players were saying, okay, hey, look, this would be a great opportunity for you to come hit this flag of mine. And the other guy would be like, oh, yeah, okay, how do you think we should do that? And then they would talk about how they're going to frame the scene up. And then we framed up the scene, and it was beautiful, right? It was really, really good. It worked great. When they were doing this, I was thinking, I hope this isn't going to break the immersion or whatever, right? Are we going to lose some immersion by talking about them so openly like this? No, you are not. You're going to get really, really sharp ass scenes, and the players all loved it because it was this. It was the scene they wanted to have. It's why they wrote the flag the way they did. It was perfect. So the solution to flags is to remember that Dungeon World is supposed to be a conversation, and you embrace that.
That's really good. Yeah, I like that. I still don't know if that's quite the solution for me because my players are so new. It's not like they're used to framing scenes or something like that where I could use a tool like that to help them. But I could see this still helping at least somewhat in...
For a more seasoned story gamer type group, yeah, it's a great solution.
Yeah.
Right? For a group that's used to playing scene framing type games or narrative focused games, it was a really, really good solution for us.
Yeah. That sounds like you could have some really, really satisfying scenes come out of it. Awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to say about it?
Nope, that's it. I bring good tidings of flags.
I love flags still, even though my players are still struggling with how to use them.
That's because everything is better than bonds. So.
That's true. That's true. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. Our next segment is What Here is Useful or Valuable to Me?
Okay, so we are doing the location-based custom move contest. We will be doing that until we record episode 23. If you want the details on that, go check out episode 18, the one that was before this one. And I thought we would do one of the entries that we've received for the location-based custom move contest. We've been getting some good ones. We're getting some nice, detailed, interesting submissions, so...
Yeah, I'm enjoying reading them, and I really like the one that you picked out.
Yeah, I had a hard time picking which one I wanted to do this week because there were a bunch of good ones. But here's what I decided to go with. This one is called the Starlit Meadow, and this was submitted by Fraser Simons. And it goes like this. It's a little long, so just bear with me. When your adventuring heart compels your boots to the earth in order to explore, discover, or catch a glimpse of the unexplained, imagined, and concealed, you find yourself in the starlit meadow. Time has no meaning here. The skies and stars and the sun traverse their normal trajectory in fits and starts. They flash across the sky with unnatural speed, only to hold for moments before resuming onward seemingly unfazed. The dew of morning is there on your fingertips and gone in a moment, replenishing itself and then evaporating off yourself and the surroundings in the space of mere heartbeats. Every man and woman holds in their soul the child of what they once were. As you venture forth, it transforms into the meadow you played in, dreamed of, or imagined where you were when you were young, and the urge to find more with reckless abandon careen through your veins with the potential only children know. Here's the move. When you tell the MC what the meadow appears like to you, a peculiar star hangs in the sky, and you know, nay, you feel, that you must offer something of yourself to it, lest this place disappear from your eyes entirely. When you offer one of the following, take +1 forward to the following roll for each offering. Here are the offerings. You offer the truth or the as yet unspoken reason of your pursuit of knowledge, riches, or glory, as you currently see it. Tell the MC what it is. You offer a cherished possession, all the while knowing it may or may not be returned to you. You offer it your most protected and buried memory. Tell the MC what it is and why it was protected or buried. Using your +1 forward, roll. On a hit, a voice fills your mind. Tell the MC what it sounds like. On a 10+, the star lingers longer and the voice gives good detail as to a location where you will find a treasure of something you seek, which is related to the offerings you've given. On a 7 to 9, the star shudders in the sky, trying to remain but appears unable. It begins to traverse its original path. Before it's gone, though, the voice is broken and shudders in your mind, and you hear only a vague impression as to a treasure of something you seek in relation to the offerings you've given. When the star is gone, you find yourself in a normal place. The innocence and exuberance of this place feels gone now. Something unknown weeps, and it begins to rain. I really like this. It's really pretty. It has you describing some really interesting things about your character related to like their dreams and their wishes, and I think that's something we don't explore very often in Dungeon World, which I think is pretty cool. And I don't know, I think you'd have a lot of fun with this. I could see this being like a really nice, like lengthy diversion from the main quest, right?
Yeah, the language in it is beautiful.
We're gonna post the text. We'll have the text available for people. So it's exploring themes that are not usually themes that you look at in Dungeon World, which is exciting, and it develops the external fiction in another way, and it really could help your character or your players get into their character's headspace a lot more than maybe they are. And I could definitely see this taking like a good third of a session, especially if you're doing it with more than one character at a time. Yeah, it would be fun. It'd be. I could totally see this being one of these like great intermission type moments, I guess. Like, you know, we've just finished a big quest, or we're about to go on a big quest, right? But now we're going to stop for a little bit and we're going to do this, right? And we're going to talk about why this is happening and how you're feeling and how do you experience it? How do you perceive it? Just a nice little diversion. I've done similar things to this in my games. I did this one thing one time where the characters drank this wine that gave them access to the memories of the people who created the wine, or who were part of this, who lived on this land where the wine was, where the grapes were grown. And we had a nice, like, you know, good portion of a session, not quite a third, but it was pretty close, where we just went around and like discussed the different memories that the characters gained, like from drinking this memory wine, and how it made them feel, and what they think it has to do with like the upcoming adventure. You know, it was really, really nice. This reminds me a lot of that. Yeah.
So I had a question about it though, and I'm not sure if the text is entirely clear. If you give all 3 answers, do you get +3 forward?
I think that's how you're supposed to do it. Yeah. So if you give up all 3 offerings, you would get +3.
Okay.
Yeah, it's worded a little funny. I would probably change the wording a little bit, but I understood what he meant.
Okay, I wasn't sure about that. If so, and you're really having your players hit that hard, that's some
There's
serious,
a lot going on there.
That's some serious heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Like, as the GM trying to tie in all of those things into my response, I would need a minute.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. You would have to really take your time on this, right? You would have to really take your time on this and make sure, you know, again, doing good expectation setting with your players. Make sure your players knew what we were about to do, right? And that like the experience we're getting tonight is this, So, and I think if you set those expectations correctly, your players are going to love something like this, right? This would be really like my players would. This would be this would go over really great with my group.
Yeah, yeah. Like I was thinking about this as being like, instead of my characters undertaking a perilous journey, I would have them do this move as they like rowed a ship across the sea at night, and that would be the Starlit Meadow.
Oh, that's pretty good. Area. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I don't know. It's a really cool move. I love it.
Yeah, I'm into it. I just want to give a little shout out to the author of this move, Fraser Simons. He actually has a Kickstarter going on right now for a cyberpunk role-playing game that is also based off Apocalypse World, just like Dungeon World is based off Apocalypse World. It's called The Veil, and I think when this goes up, it'll still have a few days left in its campaign, probably like 7 or 8 days. Go check it out. It's fucking beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful Kickstarters I've seen in ages. If you're into cyberpunk especially, definitely worth checking out. So just want to give a little shout out to that Kickstarter, because I just backed it myself. So
nice.
Yeah. So I'll put a link. But yeah, thanks Fraser for submitting that. It was cool.
Yeah, it's great. Our next segment is What is About to Happen.
This is our comic strip AP featuring the ongoing adventures of Domenico Castafiel. And when we last saw Domenico, he was being led down to the dungeons beneath Iotho's manse by a guard. Iotho has like some cells and then a vault. You were going to get access to the vault so that you could look for this thing that you're looking for, right? Which is still yet undefined, but it may not even be down here. We'll see. So you've been taken downstairs. It looks like just like a large basement area, but with a couple of little hallways going off this main hallway. Once you kind of go down the stairs into this subterranean part, there are a couple of sconces on the wall with torches, so you can easily see where you're going. And Iotho's guard is just walking ahead of you, about 3 paces ahead of you, as you guys make your way down. As you're going down the longer corridor to get to the end where the vault is, you notice to the side, you actually see someone whispering to a person that's in a cell. It could very well be the assassin / ritualist who is trying to complete this ritual that we've been discussing in the cell. It's a little unclear, but there's some kind of like hushed conversation going on in the darkness just off to the side. What do you do?
So besides looking for the item that's going to help my family, I'm also keeping an eye out for that ceremonial dagger that the demon was instructing me to get. Because if I can't have one, I might as well have the other. But since I'm getting closer and closer to this conversation, I'll try and pick up and see if I can hear what they're saying.
Yeah. You'll have to stop a little bit to really listen to it, because otherwise you're going to just walk right past the adjacent hallway. So you may have to like convince the guard to like stop for a second or something.
I'll just like tap him on the shoulder, and I'll be like kneeling down like I'm tying my laces on my boot, and I'm like, pardon, give me a moment.
Nice. You can kind of make out a little bit of what they're saying. Do a discern realities.
8.
Okay, you get 1 question.
What here is not what it appears to be?
You can't quite make out the conversation, but you can tell 2 things for sure. At the kind of funny angle you're at as you're kind of looking down this dimly lit hall, you can tell that the person behind what appears to be like a metal barred cell, that's definitely the person who was trying to kill Iotho. Okay. And the person conversing with him is Edvard, the major domo.
Oh,
and
really?
They're clearly in cahoots of some sort. Like they're having an intimate, close conversation.
Okay. And how much further down is it to the vault?
The vault's another like 50 paces or so.
Okay, so I could see this easily from the vault.
The vault's at the end of this main corridor that you're walking down. Their conversation is happening in an adjacent hallway just off that corridor. Okay, so if you go past that that adjacent hallway, like, you'd be around the corner from it, basically.
Okay. When I recognize that it's Edvard talking to him, after I finish tying my laces, or at least it looks like I'm tying my laces, I get up and I call out to Edvard.
Oh.
Say, "Oh, fancy running into you down here. I would think that you would have business elsewhere, securing the perimeter."
He steps into the torchlight so you get a better look at him, and his face has gone white. Like, he was not expecting to be seen down here, and he definitely wasn't expecting to see you down here yet.
Yeah, I see that, and I kind of leer at him. I say, "Oh my, you look like you've just seen a demon."
He steps forward to you. He very quickly walks the, 10 or 20 paces or so to get up to you, and he says, "Domenico Castafiel, I think you may misunderstand what's going on down here."
"Is that so? Please. What do you think I think, and perhaps you should correct it."
"I think you think that you've seen some sort of collusion going on, but in fact what you've seen is myself trying to interrogate this would-be assassin."
"Oh, you don't say. Truly, Edvard, I must show you the finer points of interrogation. Please, after me, follow me." And I begin walking towards the cage and pulling out a small knife that I'm going to use to carve up this guy, unless Edvard's going to stop me.
Well, okay, you have the basic trouble of getting into the cage, right? I mean, getting into the cell might be an issue, but we'll go with this. The guard, meanwhile, is kind of rounds the corner to this whole little hallway you guys are having this conversation in, and he's trying to, like, get at you, and Edvard says, basically just, like, tells him that that'll be enough, he's no longer needed, and sends him away. So it's just you, Edvard, and this guy, okay?
Gotcha.
You're there. You're facing this man. I think he's not really sure. He's like holding the bars still. Like, he doesn't really know what's going on. And he's kind of looking, trying to see Edvard. He's a real simple, like, kind of a nondescript looking guy, right? He was wearing a mask when you saw him. And now he just looks, kind of just wan complexion, stringy brown hair, not, kind of low-born, to be sure, right?
As I get nearer to the bars, is Edvard, like, coming up with me?
Oh, he is, yeah.
I'll throw my arm around him, kind of like if we have some kind of camaraderie, and I'm, like, talking to him, and then, like, whispering off to the side, and I'm actually going to try and cast a spell real quick.
Sure. What are we going to try to do?
I'm going to try and cast Charm Person.
On Edvard or the guy?
On Edvard.
Okay, go ahead, do it.
That's a 10.
Okay, will you read the text of the spell to me?
"The person you touch while casting this spell counts you as a friend until you take damage, or until they take damage, or you prove otherwise."
What changes about Edvard's physical disposition or appearance or mannerism that lets you know your spell has worked?
His eyes were wide, but now they narrow to a kind of almost like conspiratorial amount, and his lips kind of curl, and he starts to whisper to the man in the cell and to me as if I was a part of the conversation the entire time.
Sounds good. We'll end it there.
That just leaves one final question. Who's really in control here?
That would be the Gauntlet. We have a website. It's www.gauntlet-rpg.com. On that website, you will find links to all three of our podcasts, including this show, the Gauntlet Podcast, and Plus One Forward. In addition, we have links to our G Plus community, which is really awesome. You should go join it. And our various meetups, including Gauntlet Hangouts, where we play plenty of online games. A quick little reminder about the contest. In order to participate in the contest, you have to paste your text into the comments on this show, either on the website or on one of our G Plus posts.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jason.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, listeners. That's our show.